Okay, I recently ran into this question. What's the point of drawing if AI can do it better? And honestly, not just better, but also in like 2 minutes, right? What is the point of drawing? And I want to explore this together. So I'm going to kind of just think this through out loud. And here's my thoughts. So I had initially, on the left, this was one of my original drawings. This was inspired by Alan Watts, and I was thinking about making this some sort of sword fighting Zen master. Okay, this was roughly 5 years ago. AI was not out yet, and I never just came around to finishing him. And as you can tell, on the right here, he's fully finished. He's all done, and this only took maybe 4 tries. Obviously, I had to get better. Like, it seems like if you just have the syntax, the proper wordsmithing capabilities, if you have the descriptive ability, you can leverage AI to create exactly what you want from your brain and see it immediately realized right then and there, which is quite astonishing for any aspiring artist today, and especially me, who didn't have this capability growing up. So I basically had to learn how to draw if I wanted to see anything particularly realized and visualized for myself. Which means this stuff, this took weeks. This took like months, man. Months. And it may not look like much because, well, life, work, relationships, all this other jazz. At the peak of my capability, this is the stuff I was able to create. And then, it just took too much time. It just took, and I wasn't really making money. But at this point in my life, I'm bringing this back up. I love drawing. And there is something I truly feel like even though I might be biased, I do feel like there's something intrinsically valuable about learning the craft, about learning the skill and the art and the elements that go along with it. Because when I truly think about it, even though it feels amazing to hit a flow state, it's actually, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of learning how to dance. And I'm not a great dancer, by no stretch of the imagination. But learning the fundamentals, you recognize that there's a lead and that there's a follow. And when you hear the teacher speak, there's this odd, immediate, intuitive capability to recognize he's talking about the dance between the masculine and feminine. And although he's particularly talking about just the dance and the sequence that he's going to involve you both in, you sense that there's more to this aspect. It's almost this you can abstract and apply his dialogue because there's like a metaphor underlying all of it. So I do think that there's something like that in drawing, and you can start with the elements, and I find that incredibly useful. So for example, and I know I'm going to pivot a little bit because we're still talking about drawing, right? Like hand drawing. That is starting to seem like it might as well go to the way of the dodo if you already have the descriptive language for it. Okay, so this is just a couple of elements that go along with the art of drawing and its fundamentals. So balance, distribution of visual weight, right? Balance in imagery, balance. There's almost like little mini life lessons that go along with it, right? Contrast, juxtaposition of elements. You're thinking about hierarchy, small element, large element. One makes the other one look bigger and smaller just by mere contrast. And then movement. You're talking about repetition and how to lead the eye. Okay. Scaling. So this is proportions. Proportions really help increase the hierarchy of an image and how they relate to each other. Repetition, similarity, unity, right? All this stuff helps you to understand something more intrinsic than just the craft itself, although that is absolutely useful for the craft itself, right? The distribution of space. A good composition should have the right selection of order, rhythm, intelligence, balance, right? This is what the stuff we're talking about. Now, I know that this is getting far-fetched because this is more about elements and this is more about creative direction, vision in general. We're not talking about drawing fundamentals particularly, but I do think there's something to be said about drawing and the flow that goes along with it. All right, so it seems to me that obviously this stuff isn't going anywhere, right? This stuff is not going anywhere. AI, if you're going to create any kind of image art, AI has to become part of your workflow. It just is what it is. It totally is what it is. But when it comes to the art of sketching and hand drawing, there's little moments, and you recognize this in dancing as well. There's little moments that come into play that you realize that it's tiny little metaphorical life lessons embedded in there. Right, so for example, if I want to create something, if I want to just create the shape of something, so I'm going to create a eye. Right, you'll immediately recognize that like I could just keep drawing and sketching, but depending on whose art form you work with, a lot of what I've discovered, one of the techniques, and that's a big part of it, right? Principles, techniques, they have their own thing. So what I learned to do was draft and then refine. Draft and refine. So this is basically practice and perfect. Right. You could come to the same conclusions in many different domains of art. You know, you could even think about this in dancing. I play basketball, right? So you practice, and that would be your draft. You practice a single move, a single variation, a sequence, and then you continuously refine it. You practice it again, refine it, practice, and you kind of go through that sequence. So in drawing regard, what usually happens is you leave a trace for yourself, and that becomes your previous trace, and you refine that. Okay, you want quicker strokes. Quicker strokes help that little lag. So you know that there's like jitter when you're too slow. Quicker strokes help with that jitter, and it honestly does make it look way smoother. It does take a couple tries, but eventually you kind of get the point. Yeah, basically this is a quick thing, right? But there's when it comes to drawing, you'll recognize that there's weight in your lines, and this can help you understand the difference between what those weights can do, right? So a hard stroke is obviously way different, and then you can even have this, and they have their own different effects, and when used, I would say in its proper place or in variation, it does tend to have a cool effect. But there's all sorts of things I think that could be done. Again, I'm just kind of spitballing here with you. But in essence, that's what I think it comes down to, is quickly being able to draft ideas. And when you have these sort of elements in mind, you could just quickly storyboard to help you bring that descriptive language about. So that's what I think is still useful about sketching. I don't know if it's really useful to have a complete and utter, otherwise speaking, like I don't think I can ever truly one-to-one describe this what I had envisioned to AI and have it do it for me. AI can get pretty close. It can maybe even get his build, his some of his form, some of the tech, right? But at the end of the day, you're still going. I would still to truly have that one-to-one vision of what's up here in my head. I would still have to go in and draw the rest of it, or at least Photoshop the rest of what exactly what I want is on it. So you let me know what you think. I do think that there is a good place for sketching. The art of sketching, learning it is still super useful in understanding not just the craft of drawing, but life itself. And the principles that underline it are applicable in many different places in one's life. All right, deuces.